Hi there, this is Toby Green and you're listening to The Green Room with Tom Green and Jacob Gaynor. Stay tuned.
Oh, coffee's for a week for that, mate.
Tom, episode 10, and it doesn't get any bigger.
It certainly does not, Jacob. It is, in fact, so large that normally we make our guests wait
Behind
off
the
screen behind, but we just couldn't wait to get this bloke on the screen, his beautiful face. And as everyone can now see, Callan Ward, thank you very much for having us. Sorry for coming on, Wardy, not having us, but it's a big week. It's a massive week. One of our guests we've already had, and we've got him back.
Before we introduce Sporty,
Oh, come on. He's there.
he's
mate.
here, but the people watching can tell. The listeners just got shocked. There's one thing we need to address first, Tom. How is your ankle?
Don't do this. Don't do this to him.
The fans want to know. They've been peppering me with questions.
Yeah, well, I don't know. As in the docs, I'll be touch and go for this weekend. Thankfully, the scans came back pretty clear, so I didn't tear any major ligaments or anything like that. But I tore the capsule and there's a fair bit of swelling and bleeding in and around it. So we'll wait and see with this weekend. Thursday will be a big day. See what we can get done. And if not this weekend, I'll be playing next weekend. But I'll be doing absolutely everything I can to play this weekend because it's one I don't want to miss out on.
You'll be in, mate. You'll be in. You're not missing this week.
Now,
Which makes me look soft, by the way, I'm aware.
well, yeah. What we normally do, as you said at the start, is we normally have our guests behind, and then we welcome them on. There's a bit of fanfare. You've obviously just sat straight down because of who you are, and that just shows the levels of respect.
For us.
But what we normally do is a little bit of an introduction. So I'm going to do an introduction, and then we'll talk to you. Okay.
Sure.
Our next guest is one of the most influential figures in the history of our football club. He's been a pioneer for the Giants and for the growth of our game in New South Wales. He's a future AFL Hall of Famer. He's got a heart full of gold and a head full of cement. He was the first ever Giants co-captain. He was the first ever Giants goal scorer. He was the first ever Kevin Sheedy medalist. He was the first Giants player to 100 games. He was the first Giants player to 200 games. And most importantly, he's the first to ever feature on In the Green Room twice. Callan Ward, welcome to In the Green Room.
Thank you for having me. As always, it's good to be here again. Always good to share the mic with you two boys.
What an intro that was, Gaines. Really well done.
Thanks, mate.
You wrote that one?
Well, yeah, I did.
Well done.
5 minutes before you agreed to come on. When we listed some pretty impressive accolades there, but where does coming on the Green Room twice stand?
I'll try up there. Like it's top 5, definitely.
Yeah, don't
It beats 200 AFL games. Get me on a third time, and that might beat 300. We'll see.
Well, you might be the hardest man in football to catch. You
I'm
might have
busy.
to. You're not that busy.
I'm busy.
I've got 2 kids.
I've got shit to do.
No, but it is a pretty special week for not only yourself, but obviously your family and the football club. But have you? I guess it's early in the week, but have you had a chance to kind of reflect or look ahead to what the weekend will mean?
A little bit. Probably starting to now. Like the more I organise, the more people that speak to me, ask for tickets, and say different things to me throughout the week. It's I guess it makes you realise how many people you've got involved and actually care about your football career. And over the 17 years, I've met so many good people in my career and in football. And my family's been there throughout everything, and my friends who are still my mates from school these days have been there throughout everything as well. So I guess weeks like this really make you feel really special because there's been people there that have just loved watching you play football and have been there throughout the whole journey.
Did you think you'd get to 300? From the start, did you have a figure in mind? You're like, oh, I could see myself playing 300 games, or was there times throughout where you're like, oh, I don't think I'm going to get there now, or whatever it may be?
Oh, I'd say definitely at the start, no, I didn't think I'd get to 300. There's only ever been, 102, I think, people that have done it. So I never thought I could play 300, but definitely when I got to 250 games, I was like, no way will I get to 300. And even getting to 250, I was like, that's great. Like this is my I'm maxing out at 250.
Wow.
And I just thought then, because I was going pretty shit, my form was bad. We were shit as a club. We were going pretty bad. We were losing a lot. It was the back end of COVID, I think it was, and just wasn't really enjoying my footy. So I thought there's no way I'm playing another 50 games here. So yeah, once I got to 250, I thought 300 was definitely out of reach. So now we're here. It surprised me.
Because I sort of joked about this with you yesterday, but I honestly wholeheartedly believe you could get to 350. Like
You could.
I'm not going to try and put this on. You know, who knows if that's even something you want to do, and I completely understand that. But like, I feel like the way you're playing now, I couldn't see why you couldn't do this for another 50 games at least. But
well, I really appreciate it. I really appreciate that.
That's not
But
even
but you know how I said when I got to 250, I didn't think I'd get to 300. Now I'm at 300. I know 100% I'm not getting to 350. I can guarantee you.
No, you never say never. You can never say never.
True, but I'm pretty sure.
From your perspective, Tom, like we'll get to. Obviously, we've got some light-hearted subjects to get to, but what do you think Wardy means to this football club?
Well, I think what you said in the intro is completely like he is too humble to say it, but it's not hyperbole to say that he's one of, if not the most influential people in the club's history. Like he's a first co-captain. He's been a captain the majority of the time the club's been in its existence, and we know how important a role that is for a football club. It's certainly not hyperbole to say that when I first was drafted in here, Wardy, I understood immediately why he was captain, and because he's someone that not only plays the game in the right way, but he's someone whose respect you really want to earn. Like you want respect of all your teammates, but the way that Wardy conducts himself on and off the field, it's been in an exemplary manner for nearly 2 decades. He's someone who you immediately gravitate towards going, he's someone I don't want to let down. I want to do everything I can for him on and off the field because you know that he would do the same for you. So, I can't speak high enough. I feel like he knows how I feel about him. It's nice to say nice words about him because he is a lovely man. He's obviously been a superstar for 2 decades. And it is just, he couldn't have had a bigger impact and a bigger positive impact on this club in our existence. And I think the Giants are incredibly lucky to have him. I think the AFL is lucky that he came to the Giants and set us up the way that he has and has been such a great example and role model for football in New South Wales ACT. So I can't speak high enough, and it is an amazing achievement. I'm so happy you got there. And I'm very lucky and blessed.
Keep it coming.
I'm lucky and blessed to be able to call him a mate and a teammate. Honestly, I am.
It was very well said, and it probably leads me to my next question, Tom. And where do you think the statue will go?
Statue. There won't be a statue.
There'll be a statue.
Mate, I'll put one in your locker.
It's funny you say that. I hadn't thought about it. I think there definitely will be. I couldn't see how there wouldn't be now.
It's just silly.
Whether it's here or at Giant Stadium, I couldn't see how there isn't one.
Or do you rename it's like the Callan Ward Centre of Excellence?
Yeah, it's not a bad.
Rolls off the tongue, that one.
It does.
I feel uncomfortable.
He's not one to engage in any of that sort of behaviour, but
we could dive into your career at the Giants and the Bulldogs, and we could be here for 3 days really talking. And obviously, we mentioned you're a busy man and you got places to be. But I thought it'd be more interesting for Giants fans and listeners of the podcast, not just to know your career. I think it's pretty you're obviously a very well-known figure around the AFL. So a lot of people do know that you've come across from the Bulldogs and founded the Giants. But there's a few things that I've heard from opposition players, from current players, ex-teammates, current teammates this week, and getting ready for your 300th. And there's one story that I've been told that you don't want it to be public, so we're going to make it public. And I've got a story here. It goes for about 2 minutes of audio. Okay, you'll know exactly who it is, and as soon as you start speaking, I think you'll know the story. And then I just really want to get to know the real you, because I feel like for 2 decades now,
he may have hidden a part of himself.
Yeah, and I just really want to get to know the real you. So this is a story that we've had sent in exclusively to In the Green Room.
But anyway, he's opened a top deck. So a top deck, chocolate at the bottom, white chocolate at the top.
Have you heard this?
Anyway, he's open it, ready to launch because he's a sweet tooth. He's a chocolate every night. There's one thing just about. Anyway, he's opening it up and it's all looking good except there's one little bit of the top deck, so the white part that's just missing. So if you look at it from like bird's eye, it's all the white heads of it, and then just one bit that's just dark chocolate, like the bottom of it. And like he claims that he looked at it and had a laugh. And then anyway, he's like most people would just be like, oh, well, I'm just missing a bit. Like things happen in the world, like mistakes happen. He's emailed Cadbury and said,
God.
I don't know what he said. I don't want to put May on this, but he said something like, look, I'm not upset, but I just think it's a bit funny that I've opened this packet and I'm just missing the head of one of my pieces in what is it? I don't know how many pieces there are. There's probably 30 plus pieces, like little pieces in it. I don't know. of the top deck, and he claimed that I just think it's a bit funny and a bit of a laugh, but I didn't get that piece of chocolate. Anyway, I don't know the exact story because I know he says he's a bit worried about that story because last thing he wants to be known as is a tight ass. I've taken it that way. I've said he's not happy, and I'm pretty sure they sent him out like a $5 or $10 voucher for.
Yeah.
I've actually just cramped up in my back.
Okay, so is he finished?
Yeah, that's him done. So that for those of you that don't know, that's Adam Kennedy, an avid listener of the podcast. He's a big man for feedback. He's been slacking in previous weeks, but is that story true?
Yes, it's true. So
This isn't 20-year-old Callan Ward. This is he's
no,
31.
this would have been 3 years ago.
Oh my God.
But it was what happened was I'm eating the chocolate and I see this bit is missing out of the top deck and I'm like, that's actually funny. Like I've never ever seen that before.
Just one piece.
So I thought maybe it's like a production thing. Like maybe I should let Cadbury know that this is like an occurrence that happens quite a bit. Maybe they should know. So I've sent a photo. I've sent it into Cadbury with an email. I didn't want anything out of it. I said to him like, this is quite funny. I found it humorous. Like just so you know, this is my experience with your block of chocolate. Anyway, they replied with a $10 Woolworths voucher to go buy 2 new block. And then you wouldn't believe it. I told Kenners the story, I think, and then Kenners had told Hops the story, Jacob Hopper. And then Jacob Hopper's partner, Liv, has messaged Ruby to stitch me up and said, you wouldn't believe it. Journalists have just found out that Wardy has tried to get free chocolate from Cadbury. So Ruby's like, oh, Cal, you wouldn't like Liv's just read this message out. And I was like, oh no, I would have looked like the biggest tight ass. So I'm stressing. I call Hops. He's like, I can't believe it. The journalist really wants a hold of this. And I'm like, oh no, this is so. And then anyway, they came clean. So, but yeah, true story.
There you go.
There you go. That's one of the all-time stories.
So you're on the Sam Taylor, Finn Callahan sort of level, then, are you?
Apparently.
Now, there's a few other things I want to talk about, and one of them is hair. You not only have had an abundance of hairstyles, but you also enjoy hairdressing.
Mm-hmm.
When did that start? How did it come about?
I would say that I don't enjoy it as much as Callan Brown, to be honest, anymore, just because I'm time poor, as we all know here. But it started when I was in school. I was actually just doing a few mates' hair, just like everybody does, and I thought I was quite good at it. And I was doing more and more as time went on, and then once I got down to the dogs, I started doing all the first-year players, and then all the older players started catching on. So in my last year, I was probably doing about 15 of the players, and that was probably weekly. I do 15 of the players every 2 weeks probably. So I'm doing probably 7 or 8 a week.
You charging?
No, I never charged. I always thought maybe I should charge and put it towards Mad Monday, but I never really did. So anyway, free love. And then just kept that up, and then came to Sydney. I did a few of the players again. I kept doing my mates all throughout, and then when it really ramped up was in COVID. Nobody could get haircuts because everything was closed, and I was pretty much doing the whole football team. I've done you a few times.
Yeah, Wardy's done me a few times.
A couple of times, and Jason McCartney, Dave Matthews. Like I was doing the hierarchy.
Really?
Callan Brown's more. He'll like shave your sides, right?
He wants the fade. Brandy does the fades.
He does the skin
And you're
fades.
you're
He
genuine
wants the
like
skin
scissors and
fades.
cutting and.
I can do the fades, not as good as Brownie, and I'm more about the scissors. Yeah, I like doing the trims. I could do
impressive.
you. I could do. Well, you're just quite curly. It's tough working with curls, but you can hide mistakes, so it's good. It's just something I quite enjoy doing, and then
Do you cut your boys' hair?
Yep.
Yeah.
cut the boys.
It gets
hair.
too much, though, I admit. The 15, like, there gets a time where it adds up.
Well, it does
Because
and
you deterred me in that way. You sort of made me feel pretty bad about myself.
sometimes
and
you
I
just
actually
gotta pass
did, and I
the apron.
apologise for that. But like, to
He's
be
passed
honest,
the
like
apron down to
I'm
Brownie.
doing 4 to 5 of my teammates now, and that's my max. That's
Yeah,
like when
that
I get a
is-
few more asking for haircuts, I'm like, I'll do it, but like, just
You
it's a
did
big
the
commitment.
Yeah. all right.
I read the room.
Mm.
When he was telling me about it, I read the room and I opted elsewhere.
So
But-
do you go
You
to
were the
Brownie?
most aware of that, though. I'd say.
yeah,
Like
well,
a lot
I
of
just
the players,
understood.
especially young boys, don't really understand. Like they think it's just like something I love doing. I'd love to cut
No.
their hair, and I do enjoy doing it. But
You've got 2
I'd rather be
kids.
doing other stuff than cutting everyone's hair. That's what I'd
on
say.
your, on your days off, you've got a wife, 2 kids. Like,
Yeah.
you've got more important things to be doing than cutting some young 23-year-old idiot's hair.
Who do you go to now, Brownie?
No, I don't go to Brownie. I go to Saint Barbershop. Actually, I'll shout them out. They're in Coogee and Bondi. I go there now, and they. I mean, I'm not saying that I've got the best haircut going around. I think that's more on myself, but they do a good job for me.
Brownie cut your hair, or has he?
He's cut my hair before.
I thought he had.
Yeah, but during those COVID times as well, when you couldn't get out. Yeah.
Your hair's not great either.
I might have the best hair at the club. Hair and legs, I've heard.
Legs is a big claim.
But back to this weekend, Wardy. You will run out for the first time with both of your boys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm really excited by that. Actually, I think last time when I ran out with Romeo at my 250, he didn't enjoy it at all. Screamed. Allison wasn't happy. So hopefully they'll be good together this weekend. But looking forward to that one.
And back at Marble, where you have done some research today, you debuted at what was then the Telstra Dome for the Bulldogs, and it's almost full circle, 300 at Marble.
Mm.
Did you name every ground I'd played at? Was that?
I did. I named all but two, and the ones that I missed were Blacktown because I didn't know that there was
That's right.
an AFL game played at Blacktown, and
Was
I also
there?
yeah,
early.
it was round 3, 2012 against West Coast because I learnt from that one that was the one I missed, and I think there's only been like one there ever.
Because do you have the record?
Nah.
No.
It's third, I think, or something.
And then I also missed a core stadium. I missed Stadium Australia, and I've played
missed a
there with you
core.
as well. I can't believe I missed that, but I got everywhere else.
Impressive.
You missed one this year with Gatherround, didn't you?
Yeah.
You would have added another one, which I think would have either tied you up with the top.
I think it would have tied me, but then somebody else played a new one that
Yeah.
round as well, so I would have.
Mount Barker would have added another one for Wardy.
But yeah, so my debut round 11, 2008 against St Kilda at Telstra Dome. So yeah, full circle now playing against Essendon, who I grew up supporting as a kid. My sister Aisha, my twin sister Aisha, who's worked at Essendon for a long time, and she's the boss of their women's program now, is involved at Essendon, which is good, and yeah, it's exciting.
Is there any part of you that, and obviously you've missed some football this season, so it was out of anyone's control, but is there any part of you that wishes it was potentially next week against the Dogs?
Well, I knew this 3-week block. We had Sydney last week, which is a great one to
Big
play
game.
300, the big derby. Then we had Essendon in Melbourne, which makes it easier for my family and stuff. And then we had the Dogs, which is a huge rivalry as well at home for the first time in 2 months. So either of those three I would have been stoked with.
And do you still have any relationships with the Bulldogs?
There's only probably 2 or 3 players that are still there that were there when I was there. And even those players I don't really speak to, so no. All staff, completely different.
It's a long time in football, 20 years.
It's been 13 years since I was there, but yeah, I wouldn't. If I walked in those doors, I wouldn't even know anyone besides those 2 or 3 players, I reckon.
And we won't dive too deep into your career here, but do you have any highlights that stand out? Any games that are your favourites?
Just big finals. Yeah, probably the big final against Sydney in end of 2018, the first final there at a call, I think it was.
Yep.
Uh,
a lot of fights that game, wasn't there?
Yeah, it was
Stevie
on.
J and Buddy. And
Yeah,
That
it
was
was good.
2016, that one you're talking about.
I mean, it's always been pretty intense.
The
I mean,
one you-
16's
Yeah.
another one.
Yeah.
16 was awesome.
That's what I'm talking about, 16 years
16
ago.
final series was
Well, there were heaps of because Stevie, I remember, got rubbed out during that game, and then there was a
And
bunch
mi-
of blues in that game.
and missed the prelim, didn't
yeah,
it?
yeah.
Yeah, 16 final series, every one of them, besides the last one against the Dogs. Obviously our first ever win in 2012. Played in 2 prelims at the Dogs as well in 2009, 2010. Both against St Kilda, lost both, unfortunately.
Were they at Marvel?
Yes.
That would have been loud under the roof.
So loud.
Yeah, so just the big finals games you remember, and that's why we play footy. Unfortunately, I've lost 5 out of 5 prelims now, so it'd be nice to win one.
Well, I think when we break that, Wardy, hopefully we break that hoodoo this year. Maybe that'll
There's
open
something in
the
that.
floodgates.
There was one,
Touch wood.
and I spoke to you, Wardy, last year in covering in Phil's last season, and obviously the documentary that you can go watch. But one thing that Phil mentioned was early days that he arrived from the Crows in a pretty similar position to you, like pretty young, and leadership was kind of cast upon you both. But he almost said that he didn't really think it was going to be as hard as it was. Like it was a lot harder and it was a lot more challenging than he anticipated. How do you reflect on those early years now?
Well, we're probably a lot different. Like I knew it was going to be hard, and I was very hesitant to take it because I knew it'd be hard, and it wasn't really me, leadership stuff and talking and things like that. So when it was probably harder than what we both envisioned, it was kind of like a moment where we were like, what are we doing? Like, we must be doing something wrong. It was our third year, or our second year maybe, when we lost third year.
Second year.
Whatever it was. We lost, we won less games than the previous year.
Yeah, 2014.
2014. And Phil and I were both like, this shouldn't happen. Like, we should be getting better and better.
2013.
I'm pretty sure it was 2013 because I think your first year, didn't you win 2 games? Your second year, you won 1.
So it was our second year. And
you
that
don't know
was
the history of the club, mate. You don't know the history.
I've got too many numbers in my head.
You steered me to 14 there. I was pretty sure it was 13. But anyway, that was when it was kind of like this is so hard. We haven't gotten better from last year. We won 2 games last year. And you want to be the one that stands up and plays good footy, and we were both probably not playing the best footy. And, I guess there were moments in that year where we were just like, what are we doing, sort of thing. You just question everything.
You have a question, Tom?
No questions. I was just going to make the observation. It's interesting you said about you and Phil being very different captains, but I think that's, from my opinion outside looking in, because obviously my first year I think was when Cogs first took over captaincy, so I never actually played under either of you guys as captains, but I think you guys it appears to me that you worked very well as captains because of that stuff, as you said. I think you're a very good public speaker. I think you undersell yourself with how good you are at that, but you don't necessarily love that, whereas Phil's very good. Phil enjoys that as well. He's incredibly articulate, as we know. And you're also both super players. I think you just bring different strengths to that, and I thought you worked really well as captain. So it's interesting you say, you obviously both went on that really challenging journey together, but you bring different skill sets, I think, that probably complemented each other.
Yeah,
Is that a fair observation?
Definitely, yeah. Definitely fair. And I think that it probably took about, I'd say probably 3 years to really, learn how we both went about it. And in the end, we did it for 8 years. Probably our last 4 or 5 years, we really gelled. And we understood each other's strengths and weaknesses. He'd pick up the slack, I'd pick up some of his slack. And I thought it worked really well in the end.
And mentioning those hard days to now, do you, weeks especially like this when you're celebrating a massive milestone, do you look back at those days and go, worth it? Yeah,
no doubt. Yeah, it's been such a fun journey. Obviously starting a new footy club and coming in from the start, it's definitely some tough times. But when you think of it as a whole, and you think about every single person that's come from interstate and everyone with different upbringings, different training standards, different personalities, different sense of humours, but everyone in the same room, we all get on so well, and everyone's got the same goal of playing in a premiership, and just playing at their best and training at their best. And it's not often you get to mix with so many different people from around Australia. And it's been something that's been a great journey. And I've met you probably know, I've probably played with over 100 teammates here at the Giants.
Actually, be a good
something
number
like
to
that.
find out. I don't know the number.
Be a massive total.
I think the premiership would be the icing on the cake, but the journey's been really fun.
Well, we're running out of time because you're a busy man. So what we're going to do is we're going to end. It's a very fast one. I've written a poem. All right. So we normally do a poem every week, Wardy.
Critique this harshly, please.
And I normally get our guest and Tom as well to rank it out of 10. Last week came in pretty hot and I got an 8 from both yourself and Darcy.
Yep.
All right. So this week, hopefully I can beat that. You ready? Hey guys, Jacob here. Before we get to this week's poem, Tom and I thought it was a really important conversation that we should have with everything going on in Australia at the moment. Earlier this week, Tom and I were joined by Nicola Barr from our AFLW side to have a conversation about what's going on and how, as a society, we can implement change moving forward. I hope you get something out of it. This next subject is one of significance for In the Green Room. It's a delicate subject, and whilst it might not be the perfect conversation, it's a conversation we'd rather have than just ignore. Violence against women is a problem of epidemic proportions in Australia. On average, 1 woman in a week is killed by a partner or a former partner. Women are far more likely to experience intimate partner violence than men. 53% of women have experienced sexual harassment in their lifetime. 30.5% have experienced physical violence from the age of 15. This year alone, 29 women in Australia have been killed. Beneath the bodies of these women are thousands of women hospitalised, stalked, harassed and frightened to walk home alone at night. Men's violence against women is a men's problem. It's time to change the story. So joining Tom and I on the podcast today to discuss the issue is Giants AFLW superstar Nicola Barr.
Hi, Jacob. Hi, Tom.
Hey,
Thanks
Nick.
for having me.
How are you?
Thanks for coming on.
Good. Those stats are pretty full on. Hey.
Mm.
Yeah.
I guess we've got a couple of questions for you, but we also kind of wanted to open up the floor a little bit. It's a bit more of a conversation than a Q&A or anything like that. And obviously we've seen Tom on the weekend, the I guess what happened before the game as well, a moment for you guys to reflect. But to open it up, do you want to start to talk about late last week what happened with the club and how the club went about talking about the issue?
Yeah, so we had Paddy from our watch come and speak to our playing group after our captain's run, which is really, really nice to have her in. And I thought she spoke amazingly just about obviously what is, as you said, a massive issue in our society. And I think she spoke really well about how, I suppose, as men and women, it's something that we need to come together on. And as you said, it's a men's problem, but working together. And I think it's we're really grateful to have Nicola on. I think having people and having women in particular talk about the things that they're subject to every day, because I think it would be ignorant of you or I, Jacob, to try and claim that we know what women have to deal with on their day-to-day lives. And part of the privilege as men that we have is that we take for granted some of the things and some safeties that women can't. So I think more than you and I speaking on the issue a whole heap, it's really good to just get a female perspective, someone who is dealing with it in their everyday life. That's why we're very grateful to have you on, Nicola.
Yeah, thanks. And I think it's great, like when you reached out and wanted to talk about it this on the podcast. I think it's something that's really important to talk about, particularly as, we're all in a, what still is probably a male-dominated industry, the AFL. And I think it's just great that you guys wanted to talk about this today on the podcast. But I think more importantly as well, it's really important that, particularly you, Tom, as a, very influential person in the AFL and in your community, people look up to you. We can have these conversations and that's really important, but it's also about calling for more action. What can you do to call for more action, call for more government funding, particularly for frontline services who are providing safety for these women. I was having a conversation with a friend this morning about the lack of funding for those frontline services and, if someone is trying to escape domestic violence and they do go to a service provider at the moment, they might be safe right now. But if the funding runs out in June, where do they go? So I think that our position as footballers, particularly male footballers, like you said, and like you said at the start, Jacob, this is a men's issue. What can you do as men, particularly in positions of influence in your community? People look up to you as a footballer. People look up to you too, Jacob, as a media guru. But in all seriousness, what can we do, further than more than today and after today to call for more government funding, call for more action, and call for more government funding in particular for service providers who are actually keeping women safe. Because I think that's, one of the biggest issues at the moment is that funding could run out and people who are escaping some really, really terrifying situations, where do they go from here?
It's a really good point as well, because I think a lot of the statistics say as well how there's just so many women who feel like they can't escape those situations. So that it is then really important that women who do take such a courageous action to leave that situation, get themselves out of that situation, that they are supported, and they're going to be continued, they're going to have continual support. So it then encourages other women who are facing that other stuff, facing those sort of issues, to then they know they're going to have support, they're going to be supported going forward. But there is also obviously, let's try and stop it at the source. And that's what I suppose is part of this conversation is, let's try and make it not an issue in our society.
I think
not something we have to face.
One of the things I've noticed across the weekend and across the last, 2-week period that it's really become at the forefront of everyone's mind and a big topic of conversation is that clubs are posting and doing things and people are speaking out against it. And a lot of the comments are not all men or, something similar to that. And I was speaking to a close friend in Hannah yesterday and she mentioned the not all men line, and I think she used a perfect analogy, and it was like, well, if you see a snake, you don't know if they're venomous or not. Like, I think it's the perfect analogy, and I think what she spoke about as well is similar to you, Nick. It's more action. Like, okay, you've addressed it, now what? Like, it's all good to admit that there's a problem. What happens next? And I think one of the key talking points, and I guess you mentioned Tom and his position, is it starts at the bottom, and it starts like it could start in the locker room, like a simple, like misogyny, any comment like that. It starts there, and then it builds.
Yeah, I'd love to know, Tom, like what your experience has been. I know you went to an all-boys school. You know, we do have an AFLW team here, but, you know, day to day you're around your male teammates. If you, like, I haven't prepped for you for this question, but if people say things and you hear it, because I'm sure that there's comments, like, do you feel comfortable calling out your teammates? Do you feel comfortable saying something? Like, I'd just love to know, because I'm not in those conversations.
Yeah, it's you're right. So I attended an all boys school, and now, as you said, we are lucky enough to have an AFLW and a netball program here. But I'm a part of the male program. So for most of my life, I've been in, I suppose, male dominated areas. And yeah, I'd be lying if I was saying that we'd never heard comments like that or anything like that. I think it is a little bit dependent person to person. I personally feel comfortable enough if people are bringing up stuff like that, say, you know, either to give it nothing or to say that's, you know, that's not on. It's not what we stand for. I think one thing I will say about the Giants in particular is since I've been at the club, there's always been an AFLW program. And so I think that having, I suppose, that visibility of you guys, like we often cross paths, whether it's training or the gym, that sort of stuff. And the one thing I will say is I think we can do that a little bit better too. But I think having that there has made it's sort of normalised having women in the workplace more as well. And so I think that it's something that is it's been really good for, I think, us as a whole club, being really inclusive and having everybody around so that I suppose it is more like the real world and having those really male-dominated arenas. I think, you've got to be careful sometimes because you can hear it. But I think for the most part, our playing group in particular, I think, is very good at. We don't hear much of that at all.
Yeah, I think it's hard because if you don't call it out at the source, you know, with your closest teammates, it's just a spiral effect, right? You say one thing, so it's like, oh, that's okay, and if you don't call it out, it's like the person who's maybe said something or done something goes, oh well. Well,
it's almost
that was
like
fine.
It become like, and you said, Tom, that you're almost comfortable enough to call it out, which would be not everyone. But if you're, you know, say you're not the most confident of people, if someone says something like that, a way of kind of like getting around it and moving on quickly is just you give it a chuckle. And that's it, which is just, it's endorsing it really.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I think that that's one of the biggest issues, that it's still like, oh, whatever.
Yeah.
That's fine. And, you know, like we're talking about, if you don't stop it then and there, like things can spiral. So, yeah, like I said, I'm not in those conversations, and I think, like we were saying before, you have such a big influence over your teammates. You're really well respected. You've got influence over the community. You've got influence over the fans. People really look up to you. So I think there's like, you can play such an important role in calling out any sort of misogyny that you come across, and like those things can be really powerful down the line, I think, and prevent things, like prevent more serious issues, which those small comments do lead to. We know that they lead to more serious incidents down the line. I'm wondering, like at school, Tom, were there programs for you guys at school that, you know, talked about consent and really positive relationships? Like, did you experience, like, because I went to an all girls school, and we talked a little bit about that stuff, but it's obviously, this is a men's problem. Yeah. So I'm interested to know whether you guys did much of that at school. Yeah,
so Jacob will be able to contribute on this as well, because we both went to the same school. We both went to Marist College in Canberra. One thing I think that Marist, I vividly remember from the first time I stepped through there to the very end, was that Marist, the brothers, like it comes from Mary. So like the one of the emphases they had was how important Mary is in Jesus' life. So this is going a little bit like down the religious route there, but I suppose was the impact and the importance of women in your life. And so that was something that was, I suppose, made apparent to us very early on, from a very early time at Morris. But in terms of those programs around consent and that sort of stuff, that was something that we talked about. I remember vividly going through that stuff as well. Do you remember having like those sort of
I remember having the
talks as well?
conversations. I don't think there was like a direct pathway or direct program, but I also think, especially at our school, Marist, in that there was a lot of female staff, and they were like, they're very honest and open, and they're the first to call you out if you say something.
Yeah.
But yeah, no direct. I don't think it was a direct course or
Yeah.
anything, but I would say like, yeah, you're
I
right.
think
Like Mary was at the forefront of everything we
There
did.
was just I remember having I can't remember if it's a program, but I remember having those conversations. It was something that we learnt and spoke about. But like I said, that's also when you go to an all boys school, as you sort of alluded to there, Jacob, you'd be lying if you say you don't hear jokes. Like when you're a kid, particularly, you know, kids who are trying to look cool or whatever they think it is, they're making
It's
jokes.
easy humour, really.
Exactly. So, like, I'd be lying if I said that, you know, my entire duration of my schooling, I was, you know, perfect at calling out something I heard every single time. And I think that that's where it's important to have these conversations for younger viewers as well. If you're hearing that stuff, you can stop it right then and understand that it isn't okay.
Yeah.
And then beyond awareness, as Jacob said, as you've also said, I think it's important now about action.
Yeah.
Because awareness is great, but where does awareness get you if we're not going to do something
Yeah.
about it?
Yeah.
What I will say on that subject as well is that obviously I'm a few years older than you, Tom, and I think we're pretty similar age, Nick. But one thing I think has made the biggest difference is like we grew up, and I especially grew up at Morris in that, like, you know, the early high school years where the female sport wasn't a massive thing still. Like it was pretty early days, and I think it wasn't until after school the AFLW came in for me. And I think now at the forefront, like there's no bigger team in Australian sport than the Matildas right now. Like I think that makes the
Up
biggest
the Tillies.
Up the Tillies. Shout out to them. We'll get them on the podcast. But I think people like that and the success stories of Sam Kerr, of Mary Fowler, of yourself, like it changes the narrative and it changes people's perspectives, I think.
I have a question for you, Nick. So you've already talked about extra government funding and that sort of stuff for frontline responders.
Yep.
Are there anything else you think that us as men and men in society could or probably more should be doing? Like we've already talked about, obviously, calling out those little misogynistic things. Sorry, not little. Those misogynistic comments that you hear around. And then, as you said, extra funding. Are there other things you think that we can be doing?
Yeah, well, look, I'm definitely not an expert on this, but I think what I might just bring up now is a really great piece that was written in The Guardian recently by Jess Hill. She's an educator in coercive control, and she's a journalist as well. And she's been working with Professor Michael Salter on a white paper called Rethinking Primary Prevention. And in that paper, they basically identify 4 missing pieces of the prevention puzzle. So I guess that might be a good place to start. She's an expert, and this article really focuses about what we can do to prevent perpetrators from, doing anything in the first place, but then also preventing the repetition of those things for the next partner and the next partner and the next partner after that. So the first one they talk about is accountability and consequences for perpetrators and the system that enables them. So I guess in many cases, we need consequences to be more meaningful and effective. So one of the things that they talk about is that, for example, when the major banks detect persistent financially abusive behaviour, what are they doing to suspend, cancel or deny the offender access to their account? So that's just something that she provides as an example. But there's, other opportunities in different systems that are weaponised by perpetrators that you could implement that mean it's much harder for perpetrators to
to continue that.
To continue those actions.
Yeah.
The second thing she talks about is recovery. There's a really strong link between child abuse and neglect that accelerate, and, you know, people who have experienced those things are more likely to either be victims themselves or perpetrators themselves. So how are we doing work to prevent child abuse, to prevent violence against women, and what's the work that we're doing to heal from trauma and abuse that means that down the line people don't then potentially become victims themselves and perpetrators themselves. The third thing they talk about is the regulation of damaging industries like porn, like alcohol, like gambling, and social media. You know, like we all have a role to play, and Jess says this really well in her article, we all have a role to play in ending gendered violence, but those roles and responsibilities aren't equal. A 14-year-old boy at Marist College, where you guys went to school, has a very different responsibility as the owners of TikTok or the owners of Pornhub.
Yeah.
You know, what are they doing to prevent this, like the start of this vicious cycle? So we need regulation of those industries. And then the fourth thing that she talks about are just structural improvements to gender equality. So one of the things there is what we were just talking about, education and efforts to change social attitudes. So really properly funding school programs to teach students about consent and respectful relationships, so that, you know, and that is a really long-term view of things. But if those programs are really solid at school, that like sets such a strong foundation, you know, to build on from there. So yeah, I just thought that, definitely go read the article. It's by Jess Hill on The Guardian, but it's a really, really great article. She talks about some really proper solutions. But I think, the real key, particularly as athletes or in sport, you know, we have such a huge influence over society, and people look up to you and like even to you, Jacob, and I'm being serious. People, you know, watch what you guys do. What can you do to call out, you know, for more action?
I really like the it's really interesting, and I suppose it stands to reason, but how important formative years in all children are. So like the things about, you know, kids who face child abuse are more likely to become victims or perpetrators. But then I suppose you then look at, as you said, that her last point there, having a really solid programs in things like schools that even start before, whether it's year 7, it starts earlier, so that it's just something that's ingrained in the psyche as you're educated throughout your years. That's something that you're familiar with, terms that you're not then, I suppose, trying to learn as whether it's an 18-year-old later in life, or you're trying to learn it once you've actually got out of the school system. You all of a sudden you're in society and you're learning stuff you've never heard before or whatever. So it is really important. I think that last point about getting
programs,
proper infrastructure in place early, to have that influence on children.
Yeah.
One thing and it might be going back a little bit, but one thing I found really interesting, and I spoke to you about this before, Nick, is in talking to just people like my mum or my sister or my cousins and things like that, or, you know, I live with all girls, so just talking to them about little things, and this has been a topic of conversation lately. But one of the things that almost like didn't baffle me, but it just took me by surprise, was like the extremes and almost the measures that women have to go to just walk down the street. Like it's just something that, like Tom and I, like you and I, wouldn't think twice about walking down the road or going for a run if the sun's gone down.
No, I don't. I had this exact conversation with a friend of mine where I went for a walk when it was dark. I went for a walk at halftime of the footy at night, and she was like, "What are you doing? Do you not feel unsafe?" I said, "No, I don't care.
Twice.
Like I'm just going for a walk. Like that's not what I'm thinking about." She's like, "Oh my God, like I can't believe." Yeah, it's just something that is so foreign to me. Why would I ever consider when I'm going for a walk, I'm just going for a walk? To me, that's completely safe, but it's not to women.
No, I mean, I regularly walk home from uni. Uni's from 5 to 7:30. It's dark when I finish uni, and I walk home. It's a half an hour walk, and I'm like, great. I'm going to walk in, stretch the legs, perfect. I've been working all day. I've been sitting down at uni. But then I often, like particularly in the last few weeks when domestic violence and violence against women has really been obviously
at the forefront,
massive in the media at the moment, very front of mind for me is like, oh, shit, like, okay, do I want to wear my headphones for this walk? Probably not. And if I'm wearing my headphones, okay, I really want them to listen to this thing, so I'm going to put my headphones in, but I've got this setting on my headphones that I can do noise cancellation, normal, or increase like the noise around me. And I always put it on. If I'm going to wear my headphones in the dark on that walk home, I will put it on the setting where it increases the noise around me so that I can still listen, but everything else is like louder around me, because otherwise I don't feel safe. And I was walking home and you know, like I walk, when I'm walking home, like I'll often go through dark patches and stuff like that. And I remember specifically last week walking past this guy who was just like pretty pissed and like seemed quite pissed and all like, you know, was obviously suffering from something and was like very loud and like talking to himself quite loudly and like quite aggressively. And I just took my headphones out immediately and like sped up to walk because like, and I consider myself someone who's like quite strong. I feel like I could run away.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I'm an athlete. So I feel like I'm like, oh, I could handle that situation. But I still feel very scared.
Yeah.
And because I wouldn't be able to handle that situation.
No, well, but it's even little things. Like I was talking to the girls I live with, and it's little things that they wouldn't even think twice about now. And it's walking with your hands on your keys so you can use them. Or it's one of the girls said that she has all of her friends on Find My Friends just in case. Or if she's walking after getting off the bus, she'll just call her mum purely to have someone. And like at the end of the day, your mum's not going to be able to do much if you get attacked. But it's just kind of that comfortable nature of having someone there can hear what you're going through.
It's just, it's just such a foreign thing to, I think, to a lot of men that like that's just not something that we'd ever consider. And the fact that is the reality that all women face is it's confronting for me to listen to. And so, yeah, like it is obviously, I mean, it goes without saying, it's obviously something that we have to fix, but no one in our society should be walking around feeling or thinking like that. When you're trying to walk home from university, you don't want it to be, you've got to think about the next half an hour and be alert the whole time. You just want to walk home from university.
Yeah. And I do often think, I'm like, will I ride to uni or will I walk home? And I'm like, well, I'll probably ride because then I can like move a lot more quickly.
Yeah.
I feel safer on my bike than walking home.
Yeah.
Any questions? I've got a couple here, but we've answered them all. And to be fair, I think a lot of them, which has been the best part of this conversation, is a lot of them were targeted at Nick, but probably should have been targeted at us.
Yeah, I think.
And answered by us, which I think's a real positive.
Well, I want to ask you guys a question.
Yep.
What do you think that you can do today or tomorrow that is like actionable that you're not doing now? What do you think you could get better at to take more action in this space? Because like we're saying, this is a men's problem. Men's violence against women is a men's problem. And you guys are popular amongst your friends and your family, your community. So you've got a lot of, you know, influence and can have some really positive impacts. What can you do differently?
Well, I think you could almost answer it in two separate parts, and that's a personal part and then obviously a work part. I think the fortunate thing for Tom and I is we're both in a position of, I wouldn't say power, but I guess influence. You know, I can use the Giants channels, Tom can use his own, and he can use the Giants channels. And then it's the personal side of things. So it's a hard question to answer, to be honest.
My thing, I think, is just making sure that you have the confidence to
call it out.
Yeah, but it's not just about people you're comfortable with, it's people in general. So, like, I feel like, and I suppose it's good to have a female voice because I'm only guessing, Nick, but I can only assume that in public, a woman would make her feel more safe in that environment if something's going on, she's clearly uncomfortable, whatever, and a guy calls it out in front of her. I think that helps make public forums
absolutely
safer for women. Then it's just, you know, when I say like you doing it amongst people you're comfortable with, it's easy to say it then, or it's easy to do it with people you know. But if it's someone that you don't know, you go, hang on, that's not okay. Don't say that. Or you can see something's going on, leave her alone. You know, that sort of stuff. I feel like in public spaces where it's more visible, you know, and it helps women in public spaces, which I feel like is, maybe it's not the bigger issue. We've talked about a lot of public space here because we know a lot of domestic violence happens in environments we can't see. But I feel like in a public forum is a better place to be doing it because it then helps a woman and women feel more safe in those environments. And then it's also a visible and very obvious example to other people that like, oh, okay, well, if that person's doing that, then I can do that too. And they go away in their own environment and do that. So I think it's just feeling comfortable in all environments in any instance that you see these things that we've spoken about, calling it out and addressing it there and not letting it slide.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting you talk. I can't think of a specific example right now, but there's definitely been times where I'll feel uncomfortable in a situation and I'm a confident. I would consider myself a confident person, but like I freeze and I don't know what to say. So yeah, if like let's say you're there and you say something because I've gone, oh my God, like I don't know what to say or do here. But if someone else if a man calls it out, often it's like big. Like we need that. We need you to be calling things out more and taking action, because sometimes like it's very difficult. Like you take a step. If something happens, you take a step back and you go, "Oh my God, I don't know what to say here."
Yeah.
Like you do freeze
because it's almost like you can't. When I say you can't believe it, you hear it happens, but you can't believe it's happened to you. So then when the moment actually comes, oh my God, like this is actually it.
Yeah.
So you're right. Just that confidence and that ability to call it out in that moment is really important.
Yeah, anything else?
No, just
Let's actually go and do it.
let's go and do it.
Exactly.
Well, firstly, Nicola, thank you very much for coming in
Thank
and
you.
having the conversation. It's definitely one that we wanted to have and needed to have.
Mm-hmm.
And I will end this segment by just saying, if you or someone you know is affected by sexual assault, domestic or family violence, call 1800 RESPECT or 1800 737 732. Tom and Cal, it's been a pleasure, but you've had your turn to speak. Now it's my turn. Let's recap the week. We headed to the SCG on the opposite side of town, and before we knew it, Tom had gone down. Tom went for the ball, his ankle folded like a chair. I'd rather have a swollen ankle than live with red hair. Just kidding, but here we go. The only thing bigger than his ankle is his ego. But it was a busy week. We talked some trash for sure. It would have worked out better if you blokes didn't play so poor. But it's time to move on. It's time to celebrate an antique. You guessed it. It's time for Ward Week. A champion of our game, a champion of our club, a champion of our game. For Giants fans, he's a household name. He joined in 2012, 13 years have passed in a flash. He didn't join for the challenge. He joined the club for cash. He arrived a boy, he'll leave a man, a pioneer of our game since the club began. In terms of impact on the Giants, well, not many compare. The only thing he's done more is change the style of his hair. If you're in need of a laugh, and I know I am, take a minute to go look at Cal's old Instagram. Wardy's not the only milestone this weekend. It's 100 up for Sam. He won't get any love. Damn. But we head to Marvel to play the Bombers. Ward's 300. Essendon have the honours. Let's hope history repeats itself when we play like last year, when Essendon showed up and the scoreline was severe. Hogan wreaked havoc and kicked 9, which is a great result because it continues my rhyme. So let me end the poem on one final note. Congratulations, Wardy. You're no doubt the Giants' GOAT. Shorter this
Oh,
week.
no, mate. No, it's not too bad. I always make demands that you go pretty hard. You've obviously gone hard at me, which is funny coming from a bloke who's 5'2", but I don't mind that.
5'6".
I don't mind
Single
that.
out him.
I liked the Wardy. Obviously, need to get around Wardy at some point as well. But there were a few little jabs at him, which I enjoyed too.
He's not getting through this week scot-free, mate.
You're gonna get a 6.5 from me.
6?
6.5.
Last week must have been good.
Yeah, it was good. It was okay. There was a few, like some things in there didn't really add up as a rhyme. And you said Sam. People don't know who Sam is. It's Sam Taylor.
People know who Sam Taylor is, mate.
No, I know who people know who Sam Taylor is. They don't know who is playing a milestone game.
You're a
this week.
moron, mate. You got no idea.
I'm just making it easy for the listeners and the viewers out there. But Wardy, what do you think?
Oh, I thought it was good. Gaines, you know you're Mr. Creative, and that was good. I mean, I think you've got more in the tank, but
That's the common feedback, and I'm
Exactly.
starting to think I don't. Well,
Wait,
Wardy,
hang on. We need a number.
what did you say, 6.5?
Yeah. Don't go off me. Go off your own.
I will.
Right.
I think 6.
I love
so he's
that.
gone lower.
Yeah, he's gone
Nice.
lower. I love that.
Yeah. I was always going to go
Absolutely
lower. Come on.
love that.
Phil was always my favourite, mate. No, in all seriousness, Wardy, thanks for taking the time, and good luck this weekend. It's no doubt a special occasion for yourself, your family, and the club, and it's an exciting week. And I mean, I'm pretty privileged to be a part of it and tell your story a little bit more. And no doubt there'll be some good content this week, throwing back in the day and looking ahead to what's next. Anything to add, Tom?
No, it's it's a good wrap up. Thanks for coming on, Wardy. It was a pleasure as always is, and
Just get up and play, Greener.
I'll be doing my best. I'll tell you that.
All right, see you next week.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.